So let's dive into Myanmar. On the surface, it's a nation absolutely torn apart by a devastating civil war. But if you look just a little bit closer, you'll see something else entirely. A quiet, high stakes proxy war raging between global superpowers, with the entire country's future just hanging in the balance. You know, it's not every day that the start of a war is caught on camera by complete accident. But back in early 2021, a fitness instructor in Myanmar was just filming her workout routine. She had no idea that behind her, a military convoy was rolling up to parliament. And just like that, her totally surreal video became the only known footage of the military coup that plunged the entire nation into chaos. In the years since, the fighting has been absolutely relentless, and the human cost, well, it's staggering. We're talking an estimated 82,000 lives lost since the violence kicked off. That's a devastating number that really speaks to the sheer brutality of this war. And the tragedy doesn't stop there. Over 3.2 million people have been displaced. They've been forced to flee their homes, creating this massive humanitarian crisis as the fighting just rips their country apart. So what does all this chaos lead to? Well, what many now recognize as a failed state. The central military government, they control only about a fifth of the country. That leaves this huge power vacuum. And it's being filled by all sorts of organized crime, everything from producing narcotics to human trafficking. So, instead of a single, unified nation, the country has completely fractured. What you have now is this incredibly complex patchwork of separatist strongholds, and each one has its own army, its own leaders, and its own goals. And when you look at who actually controls what, it is a dizzying number of different factions. You've got these powerful ethnic armed groups like the Kachin Independence Army in the north and the Arakan Army in the west. Most of them are fighting for more autonomy or, in some cases, complete independence for their regions. But then there's another major player, the People's Defense Force, or PDF. Now, they were formed by the exiled civilian government specifically to fight the military. Here's the catch, though. Their goal is a unified federal democracy, and that clashes big time with the goals of those ethnic militias, many of whom have zero interest in being part of any future union. It creates a really, really complicated internal dynamic. Okay, so you have this internal chaos, this massive power vacuum. And that, right there, is the perfect invitation for outside powers to step in. China, the US, India, Russia, they've all been drawn into this conflict, arming their own proxies and funding different factions to try and shape the outcome from the shadows. The two main global players here, China and the US, are playing this game in totally different ways. China is, well, it's playing all sides. They sell military hardware to the government, but they also let weapons flow to certain rebel groups. The US, on the other hand, officially only provides non-lethal aid to the opposition, though a lot of people suspect there's more going on behind the scenes. And it's not just the US and China. Every power involved has its own distinct goal. You've got India, which is mainly focused on securing its border. Russia wants to hang on to its role as a key defense partner. And for the US, the number one objective is pretty clear: counter China's growing influence in the region. Russia's role, in particular, has been a lifeline for the central government. Its fighter jets and helicopter gunships give the military a massive advantage, letting them strike rebel areas from the air. But with Russia so bogged down in Ukraine, the long-term future of that support is a really big question mark. But of all the foreign powers involved here, China has the most at stake. For Beijing, Myanmar isn't just another neighbor. No, it's the potential solution to one of its biggest geopolitical nightmares. It all comes down to something called the Malacca Dilemma. See, a huge chunk of China's trade and energy has to pass through the very narrow Strait of Malacca, which is a massive potential choke point. A 1,700-kilometer overland corridor through Myanmar? Well, that's the perfect bypass. It gives China direct access to the Indian Ocean and secures its vital supply lines. And to make this corridor a reality, China is pouring in a staggering amount of cash. We're talking $7.3 billion. And that's just the price tag for one piece of the puzzle, a huge deepwater port at Kyaukpyu, which will be the corridor's gateway to the sea. But that's not all. Add to that an adjacent special economic zone and an oil and gas terminal, that's another $1.3 billion. This isn't just about money. It's about China planting a permanent strategic anchor right in the Indian Ocean.
So, naturally, a massive strategic play like this from China has not gone unnoticed in Washington. What we're watching unfold right now is a direct standoff over the future of this corridor, and really, over the future of Myanmar itself.
This is the budget for a massive new U.S. consulate being built in northern Thailand, right on Myanmar's border. And pretty much everyone sees it for what it is: a forward base to expand American intelligence capabilities in a region that's now absolutely critical to its competition with China. Now, while this is all officially unconfirmed, sources on the ground point to a potential American counter-strategy. They talk about supporting insurgent groups that are located near China's corridor and maybe even imposing a no-fly zone in that key coastal region. That would put direct pressure on Beijing's most prized strategic asset. At the end of the day, it boils down to a really simple strategic clash. China is doing everything it can to entrench its corridor, and the U.S. is doing everything it can to undermine it. This is classic great power competition, and the people of Myanmar are caught right in the middle. And you know what? So far, China's play all sides strategy seems to be working. By arming various groups, it has made itself the one indispensable power broker on the ground, the only one that can actually bring different factions to the negotiating table, just like it did recently in Shan State. Now, this whole situation didn't just pop up overnight. It's been building for decades. After the West sanctioned Myanmar back in '88, China stepped in as its key partner. Then Myanmar turned to Russia to avoid relying too much on China. And now the 2021 coup has just thrown fuel on the fire, igniting this new proxy war over that strategic corridor. And that leaves us with a final, pretty haunting question. As these global giants clash, using Myanmar as their own personal chessboard, it's the people on the ground who pay the ultimate price. The worry is that they will, as the saying goes, taste the whip twice. Once from their own brutal civil war, and then again from the great power competition that's being layered right on top of it.